Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman who I've had the pleasure of knowing her and her family for a number of years now. She's a mom, she's a wife, she's a woman of God, she's a neighbor. And our families have had an opportunity to connect with each other on numerous occasions. She's my sister in Christ. We attend church together. Just an all around great person to know, a lot of fun to be around. And she's taken time out of her busy schedule to be with us this evening in hopes of sharing a little bit about her journey with the intent to inspire, to encourage, to uplift. And so I'm so appreciative to have her here this evening, and I'm excited to hear about her journey and her story. So without any further delay, it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you Miss Adeyinka Yarbough. Addie, thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe. It is a pleasure being on your show, and I appreciate the invite. Look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we jump into our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, where you're from. Just kind of give the audience a little bit of taste of who is Adeyinka Yarbough.
Yes. Well, as far as my background, I know we're going to get into that later, but I am, like Joe shared, a mother, a wife, a daughter. I am a person that has had an opportunity to travel quite a bit. I was born in East Orange, New Jersey. Parents, both of them were educators. And so the very interesting household that I grew up in, I would say very strict, rigid environment. So we'll talk about that as well, and probably kind of evolved to who I am today. But still a very loving household. So I definitely would say that, growing up, I'd love to walk you through my journey. Even though I was born in the States, I grew up in the islands, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. Grew up there for 10 years. My mother is from West Africa. My father is from Ohio. So we've definitely had our journey from the States to the islands and back to the States. And it definitely has been a journey for me. And I would love to just share a little bit about kind of what I've seen and how it has really evolved me as a person, my personality. I think I've gone through quite a few interesting journeys that has, evolved me into who I am today. So I'd love to kind of talk through that with you today, Joe.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And again, I'm super excited to hear more about that and just just what, like I said, what makes you you. So it's always good to have these type of conversations, and I'm glad to be able to do this on this platform. So with that said, let's jump right in. So. Okay. Again, you kind of gave us a little bit of intro as far as some of your upbringings, and I'm a firm believer that when it comes to our journeys, you really can't speak to the full essence of one's journey without starting from the beginning. And so that's exactly where we're going to go. I want to take you back to the beginnings and have you to kind of reflect back on your upbringing, your childhood. What was that like for you in terms of fond memories that you have, as well as if there were any challenges growing up? Obviously, you've had some experiences living in both the States and in the islands coming up. And so I'm curious to know, what was it like for you coming up, and how did that shape you into being the person that you are today?
Yeah, and I'll share, when you start out young, you really don't know there's something unique about your background until you actually get to meet other people and they start to learn a bit more. But for me, like I shared, I was born in Jersey. I didn't live there very long. It was more of like a hot spot there. I was delivered and we kept moving. So either way, my parents both received opportunities to work in the education system in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. My father was a guidance counselor at the college of CBI, my mother, a public teacher, right, at the public high school at Alamola High School. And I have so many fond memories just growing up in St. Thomas on the campus. They actually housed us as my father worked on the campus. And we lived in a home there. My sister and I went to a private school out there, but my mother taught in a public school. My mother's from West Africa, like I shared. She's from Gambia, which is the smallest country in West Africa, if many people aren't aware of that. It is a country that's inside of a larger country called Senegal. So that is basically where my mother grew up. She born and raised in Gambia, high school education, and then did some education from a collegiate level and then taught there. and then she transitioned to the States, and then that's how she became, basically a international person here in the States. Either way, my mother was very strict, but I would say that was just the way she grew up. And so with us, we grew up in a very regimented household. My dad from the States was a little bit more laid back, he kind of let things roll through. But my mom, I would say, definitely was the one that truly, if these are my daughters and this is how I'm going to raise them, right, in the States. She was a teacher, so she had high expectations. Both of them did, really, from an educational standpoint. And so that was very important. My mother was very important for her to make sure that we had our education, our grades set. My mother spoke about 3 or 4 different languages. She spoke what we call Aku at home with us as children, which is kind of, I guess, similar to like broken English, kind of like patois, like you would hear in Jamaica or any other Caribbean islands. So from her side of the country, they had, Creole was basically the language that she spoke, because she was an Aku, which is a tribal group that my mother stemmed from. But she also spoke another tribal tongue, which is Wolof, which is the main language in Senegal, as well as French. So she did speak a few of those languages as well. So it was really interesting. But my mother was a pretty interesting person because she's like, well, I don't want to teach you all these different languages because it would mess up your English. And then when you go to school and you have to go to grammar class, you get all confused. And so, that was basically her methodology of trying to keep us, as, I would say grammatically in sync with the U.S. culture. But either way, I would say St. Thomas was a very, very interesting environment. It's a very diverse area because I went to school with not only just your, native island St. Thomians, but, we had people that were still coming in from the States, whether it be Caucasian, Asian, Indians. It had a little diversity there, within that environment. But I would say that it was a humbling growing experience, to be honest. As I look back at my childhood and looking at how I live today, appreciate every aspect of it because we didn't have a lot, Joe. Even though my parents were teachers and they were brought over to help with the education system because they needed more teachers there. But we lived in a 2-bedroom house. On the campus, we had one car, to and from, and getting us back and forth. We walked down to the beach. The great thing is that we lived on campus and we can walk to the beach. I remember in the days, with my dad, everyone's dad seems tall back then. You're a little kid. You're like, oh my gosh, he's the
Right.
biggest guy ever. And, there are days that he'll just, come on, let's go walk down to the beach. My mom will be at the house and she'll cook some of the traditional dishes. She's fine. She's not much of a swimmer, even though she lived on the west coast of Africa. She said, never once did I get in that water. So funny. But she'll come to the beach and she'll hang. But my dad would definitely take us down and we'll walk down to the beach with bare feet. My feet are burning up and just running as fast as I can to get down to the sand area. And it's just a lovely, memories I have with my father. He was definitely more of the one that would take us out and do the adventures, right? Whether it be
Hmm.
hiking, let's rough it up a little bit. He didn't have any boys, so it was just girls for us. And so I think with him, it really was a great opportunity for us to really just him keep pushing us out of our comfort zone, to swimming in the ocean, to just doing different things while we we're there. The interesting part of our childhood is that I only lived in St. Thomas for 11 years, and we moved back to the States. And that was just an interesting transition for me because coming from the islands where many cultures, I had an accent then, of course, and that was what I knew. But it came we moved to South Carolina, a small country town called Fairfax, South Carolina. My dad said, you know what? I'm tired of the islands. We can't go nowhere. And if we have to fly, we have to spend money and we're going to get broke, back in the day in St. Thomas, because the ocean salt water would corrode your car because of all that salt. My
Hmm.
sister and I used to have a blast because, I'm sorry, but in the bottom of our Honda Civic, whatever car, then it was a Volkswagen Jetta, there was a hole. So we would drop coins as my dad would drive because the bottom of the car was eroded with salt water. We could see through. So anyway, we were just having fun doing a lot of that back in the day. But that was the hardest thing. Was even at the age of 10 when I knew we were moving, I really didn't want to move. I had my friends. I loved the islands. I loved the culture. It was who I identified with. And then how I identified myself. And then when we moved to South Carolina, that was a huge adjustment because it was a very small town. At the time, my dad, of course, taught us quite a bit about Black history, segregation, all of that. We didn't talk much about that in St. Thomas. We knew about it because it was still there, but here it was probably a little bit more evident because it was in the South and it was the Southeast region. And in the town when my dad took us in, Allendale, as he was, getting his paperwork for the school. My mom was getting her paperwork. He's like, well, girls, back in the day, they had Black fountains and white fountains. They still had fountains there that were still designated and marked colored only and white only. And that was pretty prevalent to me. I did not know about that. And that's when my father, who was very big on genealogy, very big on history, actually just, sat us down and really now taught us, a little bit more about the African American history, right? You have to imagine growing up in my household. I have a mother that was directly from Africa. Okay, her experience is completely different than my father, who grew up in America. Okay, who already had certain, I would say, to be honest, certain feelings, and certain experiences that made him a certain way in the way he talked about history. My mom was like, oh, she was a little bit more like, oh, everybody's great, it's okay, they love you. Oh, my dad's no, that's not how it is. So it was quite interesting, to be honest, to see the different perspectives because I'll share with you, Joe, when I walk through with my mother and we meet certain individuals, it's intriguing because she's from another country. And she is seen a little bit different because she is from Africa, right? And so there is a little bit more interest in understanding her culture there. But I do see the difference when you're speaking of someone that's an African American that's here in the States and how that interaction is perceived. So I think for me, I was a very intuitive child. I was very observant. I sat back a lot to just listen and to see how people acted. And that's how I kind of figured how I would fit myself in situations. So in South Carolina, we moved from the islands and we lived in a double wide.
Wow.
Yeah, we lived in a double wide. I didn't know. I'm like, oh, we had 3 bedrooms. I was excited, it was all good. We had a little quarter little lot there, and but it was interesting. But at the end of the day, Joe, when I think about it, I made my bestest of friends there. We still keep in contact on Facebook. It was a very small town. A lot of people, a lot of my friends, their parents were sharecroppers still in the country. They had a little land. They still worked the cotton fields, and all of that was still very evident there when I was in South Carolina. And it was interesting just seeing kind of the socioeconomic difference. Living in that part of the country. It was basically in the country in a sense, but it was great people, hardworking families, always looked after each other. We had a lady down the street, Miss Queenie, and she would look after me when I was sick because I couldn't go to school. And she would take me down and tell, just leave those kids in my house. I'll take care of them. So Miss Queenie will take care of us. It definitely brought a lot of great memories for me. It was an area that didn't have a lot of opportunities, though. Okay,
Hmm.
very limited. You know, in regards to that, and I think my parents acknowledged that. My dad actually took upon himself to create a double dutch group to just keep the girls in the area and keep us active and out of other stuff that really could
Right.
easily taken us down a different road, right? We had young mothers, things of that nature, you know. He created a double dutch group. We didn't know how to double dutch for the world, but at the end of the day, my dad watched videos. He got a group of high school girls. There were six of them, and then us in elementary, pretty much six of us here, and we created a group called the Black Stars. So we had those were some of my fondest memories. We had a double Dutch group. We had Miss Queenie made our uniforms. We had red shorts with black stars on it and a white shirt, and we were the bomb. We were it.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, we did a great job. We actually won the state competition in Columbia, South Carolina for the double Dutch competition. We were trying to get to the nationals where you compete against those from the New York and Jersey and Atlanta area. Unfortunately, McDonald's couldn't sponsor all the age groups, so they only sponsored the oldest group. We were so upset because my group, we got first. And we were faster than a lot of the older groups, but only the older group went. So my dad was able to take the older group to Atlanta to compete for the championship. But we did get first in our age group for double Dutch champs. So I did a lot of the speed ropes. We did the double jumps, the stunt jumps, all of that. My dad taught us that from scratch. And there's a lot of fond memories my friends and I have just because it was a town where you can really get into different stuff, but he tried to make the best of it by keeping us occupied and teaching us different things so we can find other ways to really utilize our talents. So that was really nice.
I love that. Love
Yeah.
that. Learning some more stuff about you
Yeah.
that I did not know.
I mean, I can still double dutch, Joe. I can still
I was going to
hit
ask you that. Now you know the next time I see you, I'm like, okay, where that rope at? I'm gonna need to see you do some double dutch.
it.
That is that is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And just with you sharing that that whole transition of your life growing up and your experiences and everything, I can see how that is played out in your own children. And,
Mhm.
and your desire to make sure that they stay active and involved in a lot of different things and experiences, as well as, of course,
Mhm.
being attentive to their academics as well. So
Mhm.
clearly, as you shared at the top of the show, the way you were raised definitely played a direct
Mhm.
role in how you position yourself in raising your own children.
Yeah.
And I, of course, I love the idea of how you shared about your dad, just his
Mhm.
presence, and of course, anytime that you're a dad of daughters, I always have a special interest in that, and to hear those stories, it brings joy to your heart to know that you had that experience. And I hope and pray the same, when of course, when my own daughter looks back, and
Yeah.
that she remembers some fond times and exciting moments, and says how important it was for that fatherly presence. So
Mhm.
of course, as always, I encourage any man who's watching this
Yes.
opportunity to watch this show. If you have children, particularly a man who has daughters,
Mhm.
you have to understand the value and importance of you being in their lives. It makes such a big difference in the world. And like I said, just the minute when you start talking about the double dutch, I'm starting to think like the Williams sisters and their dad teaching them from scratch tennis.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
right.
then
Yeah.
just to see how well you all did, and just like the idea
Yeah.
that you literally could have potentially been in a position to compete. I mean, I've seen double dutch national
Mhm.
competitions. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I actually know somebody who was doing that and possibly could have
Yeah.
been in that same
Mhm.
conversation. So that's
Yes.
really awesome. One thing I'm curious about in regards to your childhood, because you've lived, particularly because you've lived outside of the country, in the islands in particular, of course, we've
Mhm.
actually had an opportunity as families to travel to St. Thomas. And
Mhm.
I'm curious to know, having grown up in that area, at least for a good portion of your childhood,
Yeah.
what is how would you say is the difference between the lifestyle that actually exists versus the way that it's portrayed,
Oh, yeah.
on television? Because a lot of times, when you think about St. Thomas, we automatically think vacation destination.
Yeah.
But and of course, when you think about, like, when I think about your mom's background being of African descent,
Mhm.
there's this perception about what African people are like,
That's
you
yeah.
know, and that type of thing.
Hmm.
You know, what have you found to be the most stark difference between how that life or that ethnic background is perceived versus the reality of it? Like what do you think people miss the most into what they think it is versus what it really is?
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, I'm glad you slowed me down because you're right that is a huge difference in the perception. And I'll start with the St. Thomas piece, right? Because in St. Thomas, when you live there, you're a resident there, right? You're not coming in as a tourist, like, oh, it's an island. We're like, okay, this is what we have, and this is all you know at the time. To be honest, at my age at that time, it was just the lifestyle. The power goes out frequently, right? There's hurricanes, you have to kind of lock up, um, in regards to at the time, safety was not a huge concern. I'm sure things have changed over time, but in regards to just the opportunities, were still very limited, there, because you're talking about just being on an island. Yes, there was a college there, but there weren't like clubs and organizations and all these activities that we have maybe our kids doing today. That wasn't prevalent then in a small island. And then it is an island with the haves and have nots, similar to where you would in any third world country. You have the haves and have nots, right? You're basically making it day to day. You might not have a washer and dryer. So you're hand washing your clothes, you're hanging them up, right, to air dry, because you don't have that, or you don't have transportation to go to the laundromat, that might be a few miles down. So, within that, and we had family that, within our situations where for us, we basically, yeah, had to pretty much just do day by day activities. Yes, we had a kitchen, we had had a washer and dryer. But when I went all actually to Africa to my mom, I think that opened up my eyes a little bit more because also she talked us through what to expect. She says, you need to understand that even though you have certain things, this is how some of us live. You do not make a mockery of it. You do not make a big deal of it. You just blend in and you immerse yourself and you make it happen. Such as when you take showers, right? Sometimes your showers are not inside your house. It's outside, right? You don't might not have running water. So you have to get your water prepared and carry it out to where you are and then clean your body off. So I think, certain areas, I think when you go to these particular areas, just the one thing I recommend is keep an open mind because
Mm-hmm.
not everybody is living the life of luxury. Okay. There are the haves and have nots. And I think that's just a reality when you live in the islands. It's great for tourism, but once again, people are still trying to live and survive. Okay. It's extremely expensive to buy milk and cheese down there because everything is imported in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a cost to the living. So I think that's just one of the areas that's just a reality. And when I take my kids down there, we visit family so we can actually sit in their homes and see exactly how they live, not just in a hotel because you're living in luxury, but let's come in and see really what it's really like to live here in this environment. And so when I like to travel, I love to immerse myself. And I think that's part of who I am today is when I do travel, part of it is I love to try to, as much as I can, immerse myself in that culture just to see, what it's like to live there. How can I relate?
I love that. Just the importance, not only in the travel experience, to be, like you said, open minded and understanding, but I think you can carry that characteristic into life itself.
Yeah.
Not being judgmental about people or getting into the comparison game about my house is bigger than your house or my car is fancier
Right.
than your car and things like that, because we can get real kind of high and mighty with ourselves because we've had the
Hmm.
luxury of being able to purchase certain things or having exposure to certain things. But just as it might have been easy for you to get those things, it's just as easy for you to be in a situation where you lose those things. And so
Right.
you talked about that a little bit earlier about how just when you think about your life today in comparison
Hmm.
to your upbringing and the things that you had to deal with, you have a genuine appreciation for really what you have. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just enough to say I got this big house or big car or whatever, but that
Yeah.
no, I appreciate it because I understand that it's not a guarantee, that everybody doesn't have this luxury, and I'm thankful
Mm-hmm.
for it. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for it, and so I love that, and I love, of course, again that you struck that balance about understanding that, particularly when people travel to other countries, or that they're not from, understanding that, hey, it's not all primitive, but it's
Right.
also not all, luxurious either. There's a mixture, just like it is in the States. There's a mixture of
Right.
both sides of it, and in
Mm-hmm.
particular, and we had some of those conversations when we traveled the last time together, about how, when talking to some of the natives, about
Right.
how, just the way sometimes some people treat them.
Right.
Like as if they should be thankful that they're spending money with their vendors or whatever, or they're
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to talk them down on pricing so much to where you're basically trying to get me to give it away to you, as if I don't need to earn money for my products and services that I'm selling, just like you would in the States
Right.
working on your job. You want to get paid for it. Why would you try to
Mm-hmm.
minimize the value of what I have to offer? So again, it's all about how we treat people and how we connect with people. And so I'm glad you
Yeah.
shared both sides of that. And then of course I'm still intrigued with what you shared about the South Carolina experience. I've never been personally to South Carolina, but
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that there was still people, I mean, because you and I are very close in age. So just the idea that there were
Yeah.
still people like sharecropping, there were still
Yeah.
people in cotton fields. A lot
Yeah.
of times we think about, oh, that was back in long
Mm-mm.
ago. And like there was people still doing that even in your
Yeah.
childhood years. And it's like, wow, that really, or still being able to see, water fountains that were marked, colored and white only, like that was
Mm-hmm.
still there. And like,
Yeah.
for those who are listening, I mean, we're talking about, at that age, we're talking about late 70s, perhaps, or even early 80s, and you're
Early
still
80s. Mm-hmm.
seeing that like
Yeah.
that was a thing. Like,
Yeah.
wow, so there are even
Mhm.
still some places around the country, right here in the States, that was their reality.
Yes.
And that was their way of making a living. And like I said, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a small town, the opportunities by default
Right.
are going to be limited just because of the small town. But the beauty of the small town, as you shared, is that they
Mm-hmm.
tend to be a lot close knit, and
Yeah.
and people know, everybody kind of knows everybody, and you get to
Mm-hmm.
have those special moments of bonds and friendships, and things of
Yeah.
that nature. So that's good stuff. I love that. I love that
Yeah.
that backdrop that you shared with that. So Addie, of course, as we move, into our adulthood, and we get exposed to more experiences and things of that nature. From time to time, those experiences are going to include some challenges and some storms, but every now and then we kind of get hit with some things, that come across our path that's a little bit heavier than the norm. We may be really good at navigating through challenging and adverse moments, but every once in a while we get hit with something that we begin to question, like, how am I going to get through this? This is a little bit heavier than what I'm accustomed to dealing with. I'm not sure. I'm having doubts, perhaps, how I'm going to work my way through this. And so I'm curious to hear from you. If you would share with us a time where you felt like you were in that type of situation where, you were overwhelmed, that this moment in time was a bit much for you. You didn't know how you were going to work your way through it. Of course, you're
Mm-hmm.
here today, so I'm trusting, obviously, that you were able to work your way through it, or at
Yeah.
least get to a place to where you were
Mhm.
able to process it in a more healthy and reasonable manner. But I'm curious to know from you. Tell us about one of those situations that you were in where it was just like that for you, and how were you able to work your way through that and ultimately begin to see some light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and coming up out of that challenging moment.
Mhm. Yeah, no, no, and I'll share, like, in adulthood. I think as a child, everyone wants, your parents to be around forever, right? I think that's one thing as a child, you kind of cringe, like, oh, I don't know what I'll do if I don't have mom or dad. I think for me, I think the hardest moment for me, because I will share, we were still a very small, tight family. Yes, my dad was very close to his family in Hamilton, Ohio, from Cincinnati. We'll go there and hang out with them and get, the real deal there. And of course, when my mom, we always had family to come in and hang with us and stay with us. And we were kind of more of that transition home for a lot of family members that would come in. My mom was a staple. She was the entertainer and the life, of the family. She was the talker, and she would tell you exactly how she felt. She was very transparent, in her personality. But I think the hardest time was when, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I think that was very, very hard for my sister and I because I don't know, Joe. I don't know if she already kind of knew of, just her body was having some changes, but my sister and I, accompanied her at her doctor's appointment. And I guess when I think back at it, it was just ironic that she had both of us there at the same
Mm.
time when she had the diagnosis. And that's when she found out. The results came back and she was, diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. That was in 2010 when she was diagnosed. And at that point, I had Imani, with my oldest daughter, who was 4 at the time, yeah, because she was born in 2006, and then Anya was a year. So at then, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? My kids won't get to know their grandma as much, to know about our history and the legacy and all of that, kind of runs through me, and then part of me was kind of in denial in a sense, like, oh, gosh, she can get through this. I didn't really know like the seriousness or the extent of pancreatic cancer because it wasn't something that was talked about as much, like breast cancer or lung cancer. And I realized, oh my gosh, they said no, there literally is no cure for it. And that was so heart wrenching. I think my heart sunk. I think my mom was quiet. And we all kind of just sat in that room together
Mm.
and just took a breath and just tried to be strong for her. But she was a strong woman. She never really shows a lot of emotions. She was like, "Ugh," tough lady, very serious. But I knew that she had a lot processing. I think just hearing that was the toughest moment. And my sister was a more of a heavy researcher, so she's researching and googling and doing everything, and she's like, oh, okay, and she's giving me all this information. It's a bit overwhelming. Well, needless to say, my mom, is a fighter. She went through the Whipple surgery, which was where they obviously tried to make the adjustments in the pancreas to hopefully remove it and tied it up, and she was able to kind of push through that for a year. Went through chemotherapy, and all through that time, I think the biggest thing for me was I got to make sure my girls see their grandmother
Mm.
as often as possible. And my mom would say, Addie, bring them over here. Leave the babies here. Let me take care of them. And you go out and have a good time. And it's okay. And I'm like, okay, and my little ones just going there. They don't know the difference. They're just hanging with grandma and grandpa, and my mom is just trying to, just spend as much time with them. And I think that right there in itself was just, as I think back, was just a blessing because I think in a sense they could not have known her at all,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think even today, for Imani, she definitely remembers her grandmother, and obviously I talk about her. I think one of the things that has helped me and has healed me through this process is to know that just talking about her, keeping her memory alive,
Mm-hmm.
is so important because it really hit me hard when she had passed in 2012. And she passed literally 2 days before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, November 20, yeah, a few days before Thanksgiving, it was November 20th, 2012, my mother had passed. And, she was at the home and at her house. I'd left her the night before. And, she wanted us all to come one last, and I think the hospice had told us, yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's basically at this point, she doesn't want to do any more therapy. She's ready, at this point. So we all went over, hung out with mom, and she's being as strong to stand up, sit up, and talk with the girls, and have them. They're running around the house and doing everything that they do to keep it busy. And she walked out that house, and Joe, I knew that was the last time. that I was going to see your face. But um, I know that, God has a plan
Yes.
for everything. And my daughters, I think my mom saw them as replicas
Mm.
of my sister and I, you know, in many ways. And I was so excited that she actually had a chance, to see her grandchildren. And she
Mhm.
did. She spent a lot of time with them. And I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. And as you can say, it still kind of, catches me today because, it still is a healing moment. But one of the things that I would say that has helped me is obviously, with my daughters, still speaking about her culture, speaking about, how she has raised me, and that is why who I am today. So
Mhm.
don't persecute me, don't persecute me, girls. That is, just what I know. Part of how I raise my children is because that's what I know from how I've been raised. And yeah, it's not 100% perfect, right? But I do know that the areas that I feel that are important is what I need to lay as a foundation for them so they can be really solid contributors, to the society that we're in today. And part of that too is for them to always have a foundation in the church. Okay.
Yes.
And I know that's something that my mom has established with me. My mom was a Methodist, or we grew up in a Methodist church through all the years. And that was something that, even though when you go to college, you kind of find your way separating from the church, but when you get to an adult stage like I'm in, and you find yourself right back where you need to be, is back in church. And I think that's going to be important for me, for my daughters, to always know there's a foundation in church. I don't expect them to be in church every single Sunday, through college and all of that. I know that there's going to be those moments where they're going to have to make these decisions, but I want them to know that at the end of the day, they know that their home is back at church. When you lose your way, you come back to church. When you know that that's how your upbringing has been, I think that's where you know that God has always been in your life. Even when you feel like you're separated, going different directions, he brings you back regardless. And I think those are one of the areas that my mom has really helped, is setting the foundation for us, especially for me, as an adult, is that, you know, I definitely I love church. I know God has been an important figure in my life. I've gone through many other, challenges, but with this one, with my mother loss and being, a mom myself, I think having faith in him and really praying that he continues to heal me proves that, obviously he has never, left me behind. He definitely has been healing me through these years.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I truly do appreciate your transparency and sharing that. I know that that's even in all these years past, it's still always sometimes it can be a tough conversation to
It
have.
is. Mm-hmm.
Especially when especially when you've been one of those individuals who had a close relationship
Yes.
with your mom, and she
Mm-hmm.
imparted so much into you. So I totally, of course, relate to that myself. My mom, of course, passed in 2011. So,
Yeah.
and I understand. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to say I know how you feel, but I understand the
Right.
hit that takes on
Yes.
you when
Mm-hmm.
when mom goes, and you had that bond, that connection. But one of the things that you spoke to that I totally resonate with is just the idea that, of course, I was already a father at that point, and Gabby
Mm-hmm.
was like three and a half when my
Mm-hmm.
mom passed, and so one of the things that I've always treasured was the fact that my mom lived long enough to be a grandmother.
Yes.
Gabby doesn't have, because she was so young, she doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
have much for memories. I mean, we have pictures of her and her
Yes.
grandmother that she has still has in her room, and I'm constantly, as different situations or circumstances arise, I tell stories about things that I know she
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily remember, but I can remember the joy that my mom had in spending time with Gabby, and just and just experiencing that moment. So I'm forever grateful and thankful to God that He allowed her to just
Yes.
be around long enough to
Hmm.
experience what it was like. It was almost like that was the crowning moment, if you will, of
Yeah.
funny that I said that crowning moment because that's the title of our episode. It was a crowning moment for her life to be able to be grandma, and
Right.
and I know that while Gabby doesn't remember, she enjoyed those times
Hmm.
hanging out with her grandma, and all the stuff that they did together and hung out, and
Yeah.
and you spoke also about that replica effect, and
Hmm.
that's something that also connected with me as well because for the longest time, and even to this day, there are people who, of course, knew my mom, who oftentimes, used to, look at Gabby and they would say, that's little Maria. They would see her, and especially
Yeah.
when she was younger, I would
Right.
see it as well. So it was almost like
Wow.
looking at her in child form, just a
Yeah.
lighter skinned version of it. But it was like looking at her, like, so it gave me an opportunity to at least feel my mom's presence through my daughter,
Hmm.
and even some of her mannerisms and behaviors and appearances and times like that. Some of those things remind me of
Right.
her as well. So as you stated, God has His way, He has His
He
plan. There's
does.
reasons why things
Right.
happen the way that they do. We all know that our day is going to come for all of us that we have to,
Exactly.
pass on. But
Yes.
what's valuable is understanding the foundational roots, the lessons
Hmm.
that were taught. We didn't always understand them. We didn't always like them. We thought, like you said, strict rules and all that kind of stuff. But as you mature, as you grow, and of course, as you're growing in Christ, you understand that all of this was all necessary. It was all a part of the plan to get you prepared for when
Yeah.
you ventured off into motherhood, when you ventured off into being a wife, when you ventured off
Hmm.
into walking your walk
Yeah.
in Christ, and understanding what is my purpose, what is my whole reason for being here. So it all has its place and its timing. It's not just by accident. It's not just by luck. It's not just because God was bored and He just was randomly throwing stuff our way. It's all designed to equip us and build us up to what we are destined to be in using the gifts that He's imparted in us. So that's a very touching and great story that you share about your mom, and I totally
Yeah.
connect with that, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. So Addie, when you think about the different challenges and adversities of life, obviously, losing a parent is huge, and there
Hmm.
are others that fall into that same category. But
Hmm.
we deal with big storms, and we also deal with little storms. What I'm curious
Yeah.
to know from you, though, is when you do find yourself facing challenging times, regardless of the magnitude of it. What is your sort of your routine, your regiment that you like to go through that sort of helps you to be able to process and deal with challenging moments? What kind of works for you to keep you in the right mind, but at the same time facing up against whatever that challenge is and working your way through it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I am a person that likes to keep myself occupied, and take a deep breath. I do like to sit back. I'm not much of a reactor, right?
Hmm.
Like immediately. I do want to take in what was going on. And so I sit down and I'll kind of digest things. But part of the things that I do like to do is basically do a lot of just walking, to be honest. I am a person that has grown up in being very, physical as far as athletics type stuff. So if it's not walking, I'm jogging, I'm listening to my music, trying to just get my mind and body in check. I do love to do a lot of other things outside of just that, such as going to different classes to just work out. So that is my me space, to be honest, is just taking a breather away. And so let me just get out and walk or take a jog, put some music in my ear, and then try to really come back and figure out how I'm going to manage a situation. I think that's the best strategy for me, that has worked. from that aspect. Other ways that I've definitely done is that prayer obviously is going to be huge, right? Which means that I'm going to find my space and my time, my quiet place to really just speak to God and ask Him for that guidance. And now with teenagers, it seems like that's more than ever that I'm doing that with two teenage girls.
So you don't lay hands on
Please,
them?
please. But but yeah, definitely. You know, I would be do just not do justice to say that I have to find my time to really speak to God and ask Him for His guidance and His forgiveness at times, because I'm going to say I'm not perfect. There are big times that that He's probably like, you call on me now,
Right.
so I do have to be mindful that, first and foremost, everything and anything that I do, I do it because of God and what He has given me and what He has placed me on earth to do, right? Is to be a representative of Him in many facets that I can. And there are ways that we fall short, yes, but that's one thing that I do. So outside of just doing my normal jogs, walks, prayer is going to be key for me as well, Joe.
Love that, love that, and what I really love about it, because there's no one exact way that everybody has to do it. We all have a variety of
No.
different ways that we can
Mm-mm.
do. But what I like about your approach is that um, part of it involves just things that you do on a regular, regardless of
Mhm.
whether or not a storm is around. So you're preparing yourself, your mind, your body, your spirit. In advance, and that's encouraging that you should do that. And then, of course, when you are actually in the moment, you take
Mhm.
that time, as you stated, to not be the reactor, you
Right.
know. But you also acknowledging the fact that it's okay for me to have my human emotions and how I feel about it, and I just take that
Mhm.
walk or that
Yeah.
jog to let me just kind of, break it all down inside. Let me just kind of calm
Yeah. Clear
myself
your mind.
down, get in my
Mhm.
right mind, so that way
Yeah.
when I can come back to this, I'm
Mhm.
clear headed, I'm focused, I'm not operating out of a rage or emotions or anything like that. I'm able to just lock in and make the moves necessary to address whatever that challenge is. And of course, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
letting God guide me through that, through prayer and through just simply just having a conversation with Him, saying, "Okay, Lord,
Mhm.
how you want me to do this?" Because
Exactly.
I'm trying to figure this
Exactly.
all out. So,
I've been married for 18 years. I'm like, okay, let me go for a walk, take a deep breath, right? And then you come back.
woosah.
Yes.
Is that I got a husband and I got two teenagers that
That's
and
it.
everybody think they know it all, right?
I gotta pick and choose my battles. I'm like, think about it. Do I need to respond to that right now?
Said I probably shouldn't respond on that. I think they might want me to pause for a moment. Let me take my
Yeah.
walk. My words will come out much nicer and smoother if I do that. I totally relate to you, and that's definitely a great recipe of what we need to do to kind of be in the right
Yes.
perspective, in the right mindset, and to
Mm-hmm.
be able to properly address those adverse and challenging moments. So Addie, if you had a chance, as we've gone through this journey of life with you, if you had a chance to sit down and had across from you the younger version of yourself, thinking about all that you've done, gone through, experienced,
Mm-hmm.
lessons learned, and otherwise, what would be your words of advice, your words of encouragement to that younger version of you that you feel like if I wish
Mm-hmm.
she would have known this then, if she would have known these things, these processes, these ways, I think it would have, equipped the younger version of you, or perhaps somebody who is like right now, like the younger version of what you used to be, that would help them to be able to navigate in a more healthy and more logical fashion, if you will, the challenges and adversities of life. What would those encouraging words be from you?
Yeah, yeah, no, no, I think that's great. I think if I look back at the younger me, I would say, definitely growing up in my teen, I would say to be more vocal. I think growing up, not to speak anything ill of it, it was great, right? But it was very traditional, right? The traditional, you're seen and not heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Type of childhood, and yes, we're always going to respect our elders, right? And everything of that would not change that piece of it at all, because I expect the same of my own children. But I think sometimes that also kind of held me back to be a bit more vocal earlier in my life. And speaking up when I really should have done that. And I think that would have equipped me. Now I'm at the point, heck, I'm going to say it. I'm almost 50, right? I'll be 50 soon. So, I'm at the age where you're like, oh, I'll say whatever. It doesn't matter. But I think that would be it. Is just to be a bit more bold in really speaking your mind. I mean, there's tact to everything. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
say that, but I think boldness to just speak up. If you have a question, ask the question. If you have a thought, don't be afraid to share your idea. Share your idea. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Don't overthink a question to think that, oh, was that a smart question? Should I have asked that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that came into play, with me, growing up. And I think as I got older, of course, you get to, explore and start to be a little bit more bold. But I think if I had that little bit more of that in me, then I think that would have probably propelled me in different ways, even from a career standpoint, to be honest. I think that's an opportunity for a lot of young whether it be young ladies, okay, a young African American, children, is just to don't be afraid to shoot your ideas, speak up, and just share your thoughts. Ask questions and be curious.
I love that. I love that. And I totally again relate to that because and I know you might think otherwise, but I haven't always been, as vocal and using, like I said, using that voice,
Mhm.
expressing your thoughts and opinions about things, the way I'm able to do today versus, coming up. Like I said, you kind of be shy or reserved. You're
Right.
worried about what other
Mhm.
people might think. Will they think it's dumb that what you said, or will they not be
Mhm.
interested in what you said? And so that turning point for me, of course, happens in college, where I'd literally make that decision standing there on the college campus. And for the
Uh-huh.
first time after my mom drops me off and I'm walking, and I said, this is it. From now on, if there's something I'm interested in, I want to be a part of, I want to have a say in, or what have you, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to stop being this closed in,
Yeah.
non-vocal person. And that was such a huge turning point for me, as I'm sure
Mhm.
you moment in time where you made that committed decision for yourself. And
Right.
it's how you grow. It's how you become better versions of yourself. It's how you tap into what your true gifts are. Because if you just, like I said, if you just sit idle and and too reserved, too quiet, just I don't want to ruffle any feathers, things like that. Like you
Right.
said, there's always tact in what we do.
Right.
We don't want to just be disrespectful or just belligerent or anything like that.
Exactly.
But no, speak your voice. You have one for a reason, and who knows, you may have some good ideas, some good thoughts to share that
Yes.
and do it unapologetically,
Hmm.
whether everybody's on board with it or if everybody just thinks you're crazy and outside your mind. Some of the most
Yeah.
famous and innovative people in the world were once thought that they were crazy and outside their mind until they did it. And then all of a
Exactly.
sudden everybody, oh, that is such a wonderful
Great
thing to do.
idea.
You thought I was crazy when I was first doing it. you know Think about all the people who thought Noah was crazy when he was building that ark. I
Get on
bet they wish he didn't think he was crazy when it was time to sail off when
that
all that
ride.
water
I want
came.
them on that
So
ride. Yes.
it was like, oh, he wasn't crazy. So it's we have to tap into ourselves and be confident and as you said, walk
Mhm.
boldly. And tying that even into our relationship with God. I mean, that's what he wants us to do. We walk by faith. We want to be bold about it. You don't have to know all the particulars and the details about everything or how it's going to play out. Just do it. Just
That's
go
right.
into it and make it happen and let the process play out as it will. And again, let God be your guidance and your direction along the way. But nevertheless, you got to take that first step. Nobody's going to do that for you. So
You're
I
right.
love that.
You're
And I'm
because
sorry, go ahead.
and I try to tell my girls this too. I was like, you know what? God gives each and of every one of us certain talents, right? And we hear it all the time in church, but use the talents that he gives you. Don't rob him of the talents. I mean, he's given that to you, and you need to really exemplify it to the best of your ability to say, I have put 100% effort in really showing what God has given me. And I think that's so important. And I think if my mindset was like that when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
I think obviously that would have been probably, a different part of my personality that would have blossomed sooner than later.
And I totally agree. Same with myself.
Hmm.
And even and we both, have been very blessed in terms of our accomplishments and our
Hmm.
and things that God has allowed for us to experience and have
Yeah.
happen. But just like you said, just think how much more there could
Hmm.
be, how much more we could have experienced, how much more people we could have impacted, how much more change we could have facilitated had we
Hmm.
not been holding it all in, been so reserved, been so
Right.
uptight,
Hmm.
because like you said, we were given this gift, but we weren't given that gift to keep it all to ourselves. We were given that gift to explore, experience, and share with others. So, and so I have the similar conversation as you have with your daughters, I have with mine, to just
Hmm.
be the best version of yourself. I'm not worried about your mistakes. I just want to know that you're giving the effort.
Right.
If you did your best, if you put forth your best into it, you're all into it, and you left nothing on the table, in doing all of that, then however that played out is how it played out, and I'm good with that because I know you did the best that you could do.
Hmm.
I only have an issue with when you fall short and it was due to you not putting forth that effort. You didn't
Right.
try. You gave up. You allowed the challenge of the moment to get the best of you, and that's even in our talking and sharing of our stories about dealing with adversity, you cannot let the adversity of the moment get you so bogged down and so pinned down to where you begin consumed about it. You get
Hmm.
consumed by it. Yes,
Yes.
it's a rough patch. Yes, you might have some trying times in chugging your way through it, but
Hmm.
you don't have to stay there. It's just a part of that process
Cycle.
that you got to
Yes.
work through and there's an end to it, and there's a blessing on the other side of it, but you got to be willing to go through the rough patches, go through the mud of it all, go through the thick of it all. I mean, it's what it is, but unfortunately we live in the day that we live in today. Of course, we all have that microwave thinking. We want it to right now. I don't want to have to go through any changes. I just want it to
Hmm.
happen. I just want to ask for it and it just appears,
Right.
and that's just not how
Not the way
that
it
that
works.
goes. So,
No.
so that definitely good stuff that you're sharing. Good encouraging words for anybody, male or female, to embrace that. We could all benefit from
Sure.
that lesson. So Addie, it has been a pleasure having you as a guest on the podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing your story and learning just even more about you. I think just when you think you know somebody, you gave me a little bit more to not only learn about you, but just a whole level has been added of admiration and respect for your journey and what makes you be the person that you are. And so I truly appreciate you sharing that. But before I let you go,
Mhm.
as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, we want to have an opportunity to love on you, to celebrate you, to acknowledge you. So if you got any exciting or good news to share, personal wise, business wise, or anything, please do that. We want to recognize you, want to acknowledge that, we want to celebrate that. So anything you got going on that you'd like to share with us that's coming up or happening right now, anything exciting we can.
I mean, the only thing I'm excited about is that I'm going to be hitting 50, and I'm not shy to say that. It's coming
Hey,
up in a couple of months, in May. So I'm really excited, it just, Joe, time flies by.
I
Like,
know.
I was 21, but what, 50 already?
I know.
But but either way, I'm excited to celebrate, the half a century mark. I think that's going to be fun. Other than that, I think celebration wise is just being here and having friends. It's not easy, these days, but I think just having genuine friends that we can bond with and really talk to, I think is always a celebration for me. We work every single day in and day out. That sometimes it's just good to just slow down and just take time to really spend time with people who truly have some good intentions and really good friendships. So I appreciate you for bringing me onto the show. I appreciate you for allowing me to share the story. Hopefully, it has touched someone or has shared a little bit more insight to who I am. But look forward to hopefully some many more years of friendship, and I'm looking forward for an exciting 2024 year. I'm doing a lot of great things at work at Samsung, is where I am today, and I'm really pushing a lot of diversity initiatives. So I'm really excited to lead a lot of those pieces, even though we see some things changing in
Mm-hmm.
those areas. I'm glad that I'm at a company that still wants to try to push forward to still drive visibility there. So looking forward to, from a work aspect, be a part of those particular initiatives this year too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so again, I'm excited for you as you uh, creep up on that half a century mark. That is, as you stated, that's a blessing. And anybody watching this episode, you can clearly see you don't see 50 on her face. She's when we talk about that black don't crack, that's what we're talking about right here. So she's
Right.
wearing that almost 50 very well, and doing a good job. And like I said, mother of two, heading up that household with the husband, and just doing things, exciting things on the job. Like you said, great opportunities for you to make, meaningful change and impact. Those are all just things to celebrate and be thankful to God for, that He's even positioned you and put you in these opportunities to be able to do these great works. And again, you're just walking in your purpose, using those gifts that He's given you, and making the most of them, and imparting that same wisdom, that same insight into your children, so that as they are getting closer, of course, to adulthood, that they will, make their own marks in this world, and do exciting and wonderful things. And, we'll look up in a blink of an eye, and we'll be talking about being, grandparents and in-laws and things and things of that nature, so it's just an exciting time right now. And I'm with you. I'm excited about what 2024 has in store. For you, for myself, and for others. I think this is a great opportunity for us to really elevate ourselves in a great and a magnificent way. Of course, doing it in accordance to God's will, of course, because it's not just about us. Obviously, we're just the tools. We're just the vessels that are being used to make those things happen. But He's the source behind it all, and we're forever grateful for that. So, for my listening audience, my viewers, I appreciate you so much for tuning in. And if you've enjoyed today's content, I do encourage you to subscribe, share, like, comment, because again, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is what it's all about: encouraging, uplifting, inspiring, being transparent and authentic in the sharing of our stories, with the hopes of helping you to be able to have a better grip on and understanding, that, hey, storms are going to come everybody's way. Nobody's immune from that, but you don't have to be ruined or destroyed by the storm. Instead, you need to look at the storms as opportunities, because that's really what they are. The storms are opportunities for you to grow and develop and be better versions of yourself, and to be able to be used by God, not only for the advancement of His kingdom, but just for the impacting and changing of lives in a very meaningful and powerful way. And I'm here to tell you, if you don't currently have a relationship with God, I would definitely, insist, if you would, impart upon you that that's a decision that you need to make. And I promise it'll be the best decision that you'll ever make. Addie and I are both witnesses to that. And we're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we know.
Yes.
He is, as the word says, He is the way, He's the truth, He's the light, He's everything. There's no problem, no challenge, no situation that's too big for Him to handle. And so you keep your eyes on Him, you connect with Him in relationship, and I promise you, the world is a huge opportunity for you to just really experience and explore in such magnificent and meaningful ways. So with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is a place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. Keep persevering. Keep pressing forward, understanding that God needs to be at the head of your life. And if you lean into Him, if you trust Him, if you have faith and walk in the purpose that He has designed exclusively and specifically for you, you won't go wrong. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. He loves us all unconditionally. He wants nothing but the best for you. So until next time, you take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you then. Good night.